Good afternoon now. My name is Brian Pitts, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Latin American Institute here at the University of California at Los Angeles. Thank you for joining us today. Today is the first installment of our new series called Voces de Latinoamérica in Spanish, or as is relevant for today, Voces de América Latina in Portuguese. We realized at the start of the global pandemic, or really once the global pandemic had been going for a few months, that certain changes to our programming were necessary, were thrust upon us. Switching to this format, for example, something that's been inconvenient at times, but has really allowed us to expand the reach of our events, and also realized that we could really expand the sorts of events that we could offer. That it would be much easier to put people in touch with everyday people in Latin America, or here in Los Angeles, Latin Americans who are involved with Latin America culturally, who are involved in any number of ways, through their activism, through their militancia, in whatever sense. And so we got the idea to invite faculty, graduate students, alumni to nominate people from Latin America or the Latinx community here in the United States to talk about their daily lives and about the sorts of work they do to share their culture, to share and to share their politics with the rest of with the rest of us. And so the person who expressed a lot of interest in this initially was an actual alumnus of the Latin American Studies Master's Program at UCLA, Peter Lownds. Peter nominated not only our first speaker, but also our second speaker for next month and a third speaker who's going to be joining us in the fall. He was a UCLA grad student, 1996-2005, got his MA in Latin American Studies and a Ph.D. in Social Science and Comp Ed. He has very long and extensive ties to Brazil and to the Brazilian community here in Los Angeles. And he's one of the founders of the Paulo Freire Institute at UCLA, and himself also a writer, translator, and journalist. So without further ado, Peter, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you. You can introduce our speaker, and we can go ahead and get underway.
Pleasure. Thank you, Brian. Ladies and gentlemen, rapazes y moças, kids, if you're there, cutting school or having your lunch hour, welcome to this extraordinary broadcast. And I say extraordinary because not only is it the first of this series, but the subject of my interview today is a woman who is, if anybody that I know could be said to be the standard bearer of the Brazilian artistic community, it is she. Katia Moraes, I've known for a number of years. We dubbed together, there she is, in all her glory. And she is a glorious creature who does many things in this world, a few of which I'm sure we'll hit on today. So with no further ado, I'm going to start the interview by doing something that Katia does, and she interviews hundreds, or has interviewed hundreds of people in the last few months. So she always starts with a poem that she finds that might apply in some way to the person that she's interviewing. So I'm going to read a poem which I think she'll know from the start. I wasn't even going to mention the title, but I'll do it now because it's not a surprise. But the reason I selected it is that two of my favorite poets have a hand in this. One, Carlos Drummond de Andrade, wrote it, and two, the great poet Elizabeth Bishop translated it. And as a translator, I'm very sensitive to translations, and I love my fellow translators. So here it is, Infancy. My father got on his horse and went to the field. My mother stayed, sitting and sewing. My little brother slept. A small boy alone under the mango trees. I read the story of Robinson Crusoe, the long story that never comes to an end. At noon, white with light, a voice that had learned lullabies long ago in the slave quarters and never forgot, called us for coffee. Coffee blacker than the black old woman. Delicious coffee, good coffee. My mother stayed, sitting and sewing, watching me. Shh, don't wake the boy. She stopped the cradle when a mosquito had lit and gave a sigh. Ah, how deep. Away off there, my father went riding through the farm's endless wastes. And I didn't know that my story was prettier than that of Robinson Crusoe.
I love this poem.
Good.
I love this poem.
Why? What is it about it that
Oh
especially
man,
intrigues you?
because they were it's so sentimental in a way, and and I'm reading a book now. It talks about book, right? I'm reading a book that is an autobiography by Jimmy Carter, and he talks about his beginnings in a farm surrounded by African Americans, and his family was the only white one in that area. And so this poem has a lot to do with that too, how we grow up in Brazil too. And we are surrounded, we are melting pot, and we don't see the differences. You see the differences later when you start being more conscious about it, So this, I think this poem has to do with that.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna do one more thing which you've done, and Katja has interviewed me, and it was an extraordinary experience. I talked. We had a little technical difficulty at the time, and I just couldn't wait to get back on screen and talk some more about the questions she asked. Very provocative, and perhaps the most provocative question that she asks, and one of the first is, and I'm gonna try to paraphrase the way she does it. She says, it took two people for you to be here. And why don't you tell me a little bit about those people? So I'm going to ask you, Katja, tell me a little bit about the two people that contributed to your presence today.
Yeah, this is the first question, one of the first questions that I do at the Brazilian Heart Live at Instagram that I've been doing since April. Um, and I usually starts with a poem, ask the person to introduce themselves poetically speaking, and then I ask this question. My mama her name was Rosa, from Povo de Varzim in Portugal. My dad from Espírito Santo in Brazil. And he had gone from Espírito Santo to Rio de Janeiro to serve. And when he was very young, trying to get away from home, probably too, because it was very tough. His father was very tough on him. And then he met my mother there, I think right after that, when he was doing some kind of job in offices in downtown Rio. And my mom had gone to Brazil from Portugal on a ship. And she arrived in Rio in a place that the port is not there anymore, actually. Foi aterrado, né? And she was there living with her brother, one of her brothers. And she started working in an office in downtown Rio. And they met at that area.
She didn't come over on the Adamastor by any chance, did
I
she?
don't know the name actually. I never figure out the name, but from Portugal to Manaus,
Right.
from Manaus to Rio.
Uh-huh. I
She
mentioned Adamastor because that's the one in Noel Rosa song about,
Adamastor, exactly.
yeah, com que roupa.
Uh-huh.
Anyhow, Katja, you are a person who continues to grow and continues to diversify artistically. And I'd love you to speak a little bit about that, because I met you when we were both dubbing, when the films of the Brazilian post production stuff was done here rather than in Rio or Sao Paulo, because they didn't have technically yet, they hadn't set up for it. And we met under those circumstances. Although you claim not to remember it, I remember it well. But the fact is, you're also a painter, a teacher. Tell us a little bit about the two sides. You're wearing a shirt now that I think is representative of one of your paintings. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Nice.
The singer, the Brazilian heart singer. And I use as a logo too for my YouTube page. And I made cards, Brazilian heart cards, and on the back of the cards there are quotes of song lyrics. But anyway, going back to your question requires like a whole story, a life story. But I believe an artist has connections with all kinds of arts, right? And painting, writing, and dancing, and singing, and everything, and producing, and painting, and all that. And so in certain times of my life, in certain phases of my life, those things come out. I don't know how to explain. I just follow the intuition. And it's a drive. And in 2012, I had this drive about starting drawing and painting when I moved to a new house with my husband, and that was it. And then I started incorporating that in things that I do, shows that I did, like putting on a backdrop. And then a few years back, I started with the Brazilian heart cards. And then now with the pandemic, I started doing the interviews just to be in touch with my friends first in April last year. And then suddenly it was like a snowball. And I started, it was like Monday through Friday, every day at 5 p.m. in California. And now 2 months ago, I cut it because I need to work. I need to, expand. And so it's just on Mondays now at Instagram at 4 p.m. here in California, 21 horas no Brasil. Brazilian Heart Live, and that's it.
Brazilian
did I answer a little bit?
You did. No, that, and I don't want to leave you wandering in the vast landscape of all of the things you've done since you came here. But I do want to know the name Brazilian Heart, which many of us now take for granted. What is the origin of that? How did you come up with? What is Brazilian Heart?
Actually, it was in 1998 because I wanted to create an email, a newsletter. At that time, there was newsletters going on. Now, not so much. But I would send it to fans and family, telling them about what's going on with me in terms of what was calling my attention. Performances and other people's performances, books and films and everything. And I would put in a newsletter, and I put the name Brazilian Heart, and I start sending to my friends. But before the Brazilian Heart newsletter, I had a group of people that will come to my shows that were very close to me, very dear. And I started inviting them to come to my house. And we would have these conversations in my house, and became almost like a little therapy session. That was funny. And then, it was short-lived, and then became the newsletter.
But short-lived, and then it came back again in other forms.
Exactly.
While there was a salon, right? There was a
and there is a salon, exactly. The literary salon that you made part of it, right? That I started with my friend Susan Di Giulio, and it was Brazilian literary, heart literary. I forgot the name now. And we would do like once a month in my friend's house, and then we moved to people's house, and everybody would come. I would give a theme, and in this theme, people had to choose to find a quote or two quotes and bring to the meeting that had to do with that theme, and had to be a Brazilian writer. And you could read in Portuguese or in English, and we would talk about it.
Right. It was wonderful. I hope that what was it called in Portuguese, salon? I forgot the word.
I don't know, but we would...
there was another name that I'm forgetting.
Não é salão, é outra coisa. Mas...
É outra coisa. We'll remember.
Yeah.
Katja, you're a composer as well as a singer, and you're also a musician. And when I say musician, I mean, I've heard you play pandeiro, I've heard you play agogo, I've heard you when you, in the carnival days, when the Palladium was the scene of one of the really great extraterritorial carnivals. I remember you on stage leaping around and leading masses of people in songs. And now I know that you're taking your music into a more personal way, and also you've become political. And when I say you've become political, some of your songs have a political theme. So I would like to ask you to sing one of them. And I'd like to ask you, before you sing it, just to give a couple of words of orientation to to the folks that are watching as to what brought this about, this particular song, which is called Motivo, right?
Yeah.
All right.
I have reasons.
In English, I have reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reasons. Do you want to talk about it, or you want to talk about
at one point you sent it to me and you asked me to translate it into English. And I remember it being rather difficult to do that because it was very topical and very full of I didn't know then as much as I know now about the current politics. So
it's funny because I started the song because I was mad at my husband, so I wanted to scream. And then after, in the process of doing it, I figured out that I was talking about the relationship that we are having now because of before the pandemic, because the polarization that was happening all over the world, not only here, but in Brazil and everybody. So that's what the song started talking about. But my point of view about at the end, how you have to work on yourself to be able to see a better world at
right.
the end is that. So, but there is like 4 verses of talking about that feeling. And there's
Are you going to sing all 4? You want to do a sing all 4? You want to do a short version?
I don't know, but it's very short. I think we have time. Can we do it?
Let's see that you fit into the frame. That's the most important thing.
Okay, let me do this. Okay, and let me go back here. Okay. Tem motivo pra brigar. Sim, muito motivos pra cantar. Mãe, tenho motivos pra dançar. Uma torrente enorme de tanta notícia. Mentiras abafadas, sobra covardia. Quem era tão valente agora tem azia. Eu vejo acanhamento dessa gente pia, dando grana a Deus por uma ideologia. Tem motivo pra cantar. Sim, muito motivos pra dançar. Mãe, tenho motivos pra... Posso ficar aqui e reclamar da vida, apavorar o povo e zombar da política, agonizar na raiva e na antipatia. Tenho motivo pra cantar. Sim, muito motivos pra dançar. Oi, mãe, tenho motivos pra... I think you got the vibe already. I don't want to take so much time so we can have time to...
We got the vibe. We got the vibe. I love it. You know, it makes me think. The other day I was playing and I was listening to one of I'm sure our mutual favorites, Gilberto Gil.
Yeah.
Who sings like a bird, who whistles, who thinks. Now he sings constantly about death and about dying and about the coming of death. And he's a man my age, maybe a year or two older. And I love him. I've met him once. I know a lot about him, but he never ceases to amaze me. And now this song, when I was hearing it this time, said to me, wow, Katia really is in that vein, the Gilberto Gil kind of post-Tropicalia, and Caetano too, and Betania. I think that, what would you say in general? Because I know we have a lot of Brazilian music fans out there. What would you say the tendency, where is MPB? Where is Brazilian popular music today? And are you part of it? Do you consider yourself part of it?
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. No, first of all, I want to say I love Gilberto Gil, and we did one Brazilian Heart celebration. Now I did 9 productions. I produced this show with a musical every year, and we had to stop because of the pandemic. And the last one was celebrating Gil. But the theme was Songs of Change. And I sang that song, and we had 9 singers, songwriters with me.
9 women, 9 extraordinary women.
Exactly. And the whole show, it's intertwined with poetries and text in relation to the theme, songs of protest and change. That's was. And each one of them sing a song, one in English that has to do with that, and one in Portuguese. That was really something. So in regards to Gil had a kidney failure. That's why he's going through this phase right now. But
Mm,
he is a poet and full of heart.
mm.
So he brings really a different way of looking at what's going on with him, and with lots of heart and spirituality and stuff. So I'm very proud of Gil. And I opened for him at House of Blues a long, long time ago with my band Samba Guru.
Nice,
That
nice.
pleasure of opening for him was great.
Yeah.
Where is Brazilian music right now? Oh boy. I I think there is lots of young people out there doing beautiful things, but also the power of the big business and the money idea of making money, the companies that are making money too. It's brought a lot of other things that are not as sophisticated as some of us would like to be, like I would like the music to be. So there is incredible people. I just interviewed a guitarist called Pedro Martins that is incredible, a young guy and amazing. So there is lots of people out there. The thing is the quality of it. And yes, there's a friend of mine called Delia Fischer too, is a piano player from Rio de Janeiro, incredible as well. But
I would say, Katya, thank you. And I know that's a huge theme, but I would say one of the things that really amazes me about you is that you manage somehow, and I think it has a lot to do with technology and your fearless plunge into all kinds of technological alternatives, that you keep in touch with both continents, or both, north and southern areas of the hemisphere, in a way that very few people that I know do. I know a couple. Our second guest, which who will be Aninha Malandro, Aninha Ledley, also does that. She keeps in touch through the samba. You keep in touch in another way, which I can't put my finger on. How would you describe it? How would you describe it? How do you come up with these people? How do you know so many wonderful musicians? You've had Ayrton on your show, Flora Purim, incredible people. And wow, Badi Assad.
Again, I follow my intuitions and people that I know, like Antonio Dofu, one of the first piano players in Brazil that did an independent recording, and he's a big name in Brazilian music. And when he was living here in LA, we met his family and everything, and we kept in touch. And I invited him and said, "I'm there," and he's the one that invited Joyce, and Joyce accepted to be interviewed because he said so. Flora Purim and Ayrton Moreira used to live here, so they were friends, and they're friends of Diana, my friend Diana, that is their daughter, that was also interviewed. Ricky Pantoja, another incredible guitar keyboard player that lives here in town too. My friend played with me as well. So people that I have played with before or not, but I respect, and I wanted to know more about their life. That's how it started. I want to have this opportunity to know more about their life and inspire other people that would be watching. And I think I have been successful in that.
Oh, yes. Oh, very much so. And all kinds of people come, it's extraordinary. It's an extraordinary.
Yesterday, for example, I was talking to Alfonso Johnson, a bass player that played with Weather Report, Santana, George Duke. We did a gig together. He's an incredible man. And then I invited him because of that. Another one that I'm going to interview is the vocal singer for James Taylor that used to come to my show all the time at La Ville. So, I'm inviting all these people that I think they have, in some way, in my view, a Brazilian heart.
Right. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, I just think that you have a whole new career, or could have a whole new career in, dare I say it, rádio e televisão.
Yeah, I would love
that. Yeah.
Love that.
I can see the late night show on in one city or another,
I keep
late night with Katya
to invite me.
and you got to stay up late because I know you also love the morning, So, to be the show du jour, I'm sure that Joe didn't get out of bed till noon because, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think you'd have to check with your husband, number one, and number two, rearrange your schedule a little. But I can't think of anybody that could segue from where you are now to there. So let's work on it.
I'm working on it.
Yes. What else? What are some of the things that you would like to say that maybe I haven't given you a chance to say? I mean, what are other things that consume your considerable focus?
I think the producer, the one that needs support, financial support when we put together the shows. And I did already 9 shows, and I got some very good fans and people that I don't know that helped, and they put together the show. I paid for the theater already. Half of the money, the deposit is paid. And for the second year already, because of the pandemic, we are rolling the date. So we don't know exactly when it's going to happen, but I already have a theme, and I'm researching, listening and talking to people about it. And I have already a theme for that.
You're a producer, but you're also, I have to say, you're not a nominal director because you don't put your name and say directed, produced, and directed by, but you are the inspiration for these shows. And the shows, for those of you who haven't seen them, and I can't imagine that there are many people in the audience that don't know about them or haven't been to one, are extraordinary. They're one night only. It happens usually, as I remember, in March, right?
Yeah, the Women's Day. Yeah.
Women's Day, right before, right after Carnival usually. And they are the most joyous, some of the most joyous moments I've spent in my life. And I'm an actor and a theater person myself, but this gives theater not a new name, but a new tinge, It's like it's become very feminist, and I say that proudly, not critically. It's become a very feminist. It's become very never strident, always joyful. And if you want to see sisterhood in action, and if you want to see sisterhood, united, and how beautiful it is when women support women to do things that 25 years ago women weren't supposed to be able to do, these are the shows to go to, right?
Exactly.
Brazilian Heart.
Yes, thank you. You sold it very well. I appreciate that.
All right. Well, go back to us. Give us a little mini history of how it started, where it was, and where it is now, and what you see for the future, because it is great.
I started because I wanted to do a show in homage of Elis Regina. That's my big time. I am a big time fan, my idol. Because of her, I started singing. So I wanted to do that. I did at Brazil Cultural Center. And my friend Jorge Vismara did an exhibition and helped me out to put a edit video of Elis singing and little pieces of it. And then a show at the end. And my friend Brad Austin, that was a set designer, came to Brazil Cultural Center and changed the place completely. So it was the first thing, so I wanted to make an exhibition. I want to do a show. I want to do the visual part of it. And I thought that was great. The second one was
2000. What was the first year? 2000.
I think it's 12 or 11 or 12.
Oh, really? Okay.
Then I did Clara Nunes, also at Brazil Cultural Center, with Samba Society being the band, And then I did Maria Bethânia, that was incredible. And then I had, for the first time, translations of quotes of her, of poems that she had said in her shows in Brazil. And she's very unique, that, because she's the only Brazilian singer in Brazil that brings poetry and literature to the stage. She's really something. And I did the show in another part of town too, and it was beautiful. And for the first time, I have that strong feeling that that's what I wanted to do, that I wanted to bring the texts in English so people they would come in more, they would be closer to the idea and what's behind the music. For years, people would come to me in the shows and say, what you're saying, I love the music, but what you're saying, I love Portuguese. So I did this transition after I did Maria Bethânia. Then I did the show for Noel Rosa that you participated as a poet, as an actor, and you brought the versions of the songs in English. So, and after that, that's when I started inviting the women, the singer-songwriters from the Brazilian community. That's when I did Beyond Baroque. Twice I did that. And then after that, I did what's the name of that theater?
The Electric Lodge.
Electric Lodge, the theater upstairs.
Right.
And
Scott Pellman Memorial Theater at the Electric Lodge, Venice, California.
Yeah, it was really cool.
On the corner of Electric Avenue and
So I did three shows there. One was in homage of Tom Jobim and Ella Fitzgerald. Then was Immigrants, that each singer sing one song in the language of her family. So, and another one in Portuguese. So it was they sang in Portuguese, in Spanish, in French, in Japanese, and it was incredible, beautiful show.
In Italian.
Yes.
Anna Gazzola.
Yeah, and each show I also give a color theme. There is a color in it as well. So my painter side is also in the show,
And T-shirts with all the names of the participants written on them.
Yeah.
Katya, don't forget why you're a great producer and I think a great director is because you have an incredible eye for detail, and it makes you a very good painter and illustrator. You don't forget things, and that's the most important thing for a producer. Bottom line, you got to remember all of the wheels you've set into motion.
Yeah,
right? Big and small.
But the thing is the psychology too, to deal with everybody and everything. It's like in the process of doing a show, I always have the insomnia. I woke up in the middle of the night with ideas, and I have to write it down. And I read a lot of books. I watch a lot of videos. And it's like
You do a lot of research.
Yes.
And you enjoy research.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where you and I meet, I think. We're both a little bit crazy about, finding out about stuff. Curiosity. It was a pleasure working with you. And ever since I'm waiting always for the day where I can be a little bit, close to the production, even if I'm not in it, because there's so much joy around it. This is what Tennessee Williams meant when he said amateur theater. Amateur theater is really the greatest theater of all. When people are doing it for love, not for money. For money, everything gets, capitalized, in the capitalist way. It's a top-down thing, and producer, and this guy's making more money than that one, and all of that stuff tends to pull things apart. But when people do it for love,
some people would call us maybe dinosaurs to think like that, because I really believe I think like that too. And I believe theater and the physical touch and being in the same room with artists doing this, it moves people in a way that they progress and they decide things about their lives because they get inspired. But I was going to say something else that was important, and I forgot.
Everything's important. And let's look at the time.
It's research when we read, and inspiration. And I believe too that when you follow your inspiration, it doesn't mean like one political tendency or another. And an example of that is what I mentioned to you about what I read. And why I read is because one thing links to the other. So right now, for example, my husband and I had this thing about reading out loud, books out loud. So I just read one thing that moved me to do a new show for this year. It is the book by Herbie Hancock called Possibilities. And then after that, this I read many years ago, but it's in my head and can't go away. Then I read Melinda Gates' book, Moment Uplift, or something like that. Then Stacey Abrams, that I mentioned to you, right?
Abrams.
Yeah, Abrams. And then now it took me to Jim Carter for whatever reason, So it's
Georgia.
Like,
you got Georgia on your mind, child. Exactly. Georgia.
So you never know.
Yeah. One thing leads to another. I'm going to check with Brian because the clock here says 12:36, and we were going to leave some time for questions. Have there been some questions that people have been asking or writing in, or shall we proceed as we are, Brian? Can't hear you. Unmute.
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and get started on questions.
Okay.
Time now.
Great.
So yeah, our first question comes from Courtney Mahan from Buffalo, who is joining us all the way from Buffalo, New York.
Oh,
She
cool.
says, I am a white female full-time graduate student in the mental health counseling program in Buffalo. I've loved listening to you all. Do you have any advice for people in the majority population wanting to effectively increase multicultural competency? So yeah, that's the question. That's the question.
I didn't understand. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I guess
Let me rephrase it. She's saying, how can people in the majority, in other words, white women and white men, be part of what's going on? How can they participate? You have any suggestions of, coming from Brazil, of course, which prides itself, or whether rightly or wrongly, as being a multiracial democracy?
I'm going to answer you with a story. I have a great friend that I made here in LA called Erica Woods, African-American woman, very intelligent. I respect so much. One day I told her, let's get together at Zoom. I would like you to share your take about your culture with us. She got mad at me. And I have a problem with that now. And I have to deal with that. This is one of the polarizations that we have right now. So, but in other words, I started reading more African artists and African American artists, and to understand. And one thing that we got to a point right now in this world, 2021, and even before that, we didn't got it, we didn't understand, is we have to act. We cannot anymore talk about it. We have to act. How do we act? We go and do something for the community, or you go there and participate in a conversation with them, with anybody of any color, right, to understand where they are, and or you give money to a company or some kind of group that is doing something for education, especially in this country. Education here calls my attention. It's really going down the drain. You need to raise the level of education of people that read, to understand what's going on. But most of all right now is action, not talking anymore. It's action.
Thank you. Ryan, another question?
So far, it's the only question that has actually been submitted from the audience.
Right.
It's showing me I have 88 questions, but I think it's because somebody tried to Zoom bomb our Q&A.
Yeah,
probably. The three of us are the only ones who can see it, though, so it doesn't seem to have been particularly effective.
Wait a minute, 88 questions. Could it be an agreed
of which 86 are someone just basically saying profanity the entire time.
Yeah.
But the rest of you can't see it, so no harm done.
So sorry to hear that. What I would like to know then, Katja, is, without getting too political, or maybe getting too political, what the heck, what do you see as the solution in both of our countries, both of your countries, Brazil and this country, to countering what we plainly see as a fascistic trend? In other words, Bolsonaro and Trump. And I think of them in one breath. As a matter of fact, I think Bolsonaro is Trump's bastard son. See, I get to say that word without calling him directly. He's the bastard son of Trump. What do we do? Where do we go? How do we combat that? And one more question. This is more specific. Now that Trump is out, even though not as out as perhaps some of us would like to have seen him out, do you think that will have an influence on what happens with Bolsonaro?
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I don't have a crystal ball, but definitely what happened in this impeachment trial didn't help to leave a good message. Said that. I already said it's hard to talk about politics because usually, especially artists, are always targeted. You should shut up, don't say anything.
Mhm.
You can't have a position, political position, and it's how can you not? You are here living in a community. If you want to hide, just go live in the countryside with 500 people only. But you live in the city and you are responsible for everything that happens here. So what you can do is to be aware, to be aware, and to live, um, to pronounce words that have to do with your solution. Give solutions. Don't just keep like nya 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 nyaka 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 and talking badly about people, but know how to solve the problem. Comes with solutions. This is one, and don't give a space to the people that separate us.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
we have to understand that democracy, yes, it's hard. Oh my God, it's hard. Everybody has one position. It's unbelievable. You see about the vaccine, people don't want to get vaccinated. I called the DMV and the lady on the DMV on the phone with me saying, be careful with the vaccine.
Mm.
What do you mean is be careful? Oh, you're not gonna get vaccinated? And she say, no, it's against my beliefs.
Mm.
So, and this is a woman from the DMV. This is democracy. She's saying what she wants. And how do you deal with that? With your emotions? But you have to understand what's going to be more productive. And it's hard if you don't have your emotions conscious of what is steering inside of you. Instead of being reactive, you have to be conscious. I'm feeling this, but I'm not going to feed this back. I'm not going to react. I am going to try to talk.
Não seja tagarela.
Oh my God, and it's hard because you know me, I am full of feelings and emotions. I can be really reactive, and it's a big exercise for me. That's why I meditate. That's why I wake up early in the morning and I do my yoga and stuff.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about, I want to come back a little bit to your story, to your family story, because I know that when you left Brazil 30 years ago, it can't have been easy for you. And I'm sure it was not easy for your family, because as I know you, you are a family person. You make families. You and I have something similar, I think. I'm an only child. So for me, I need to make families. I need to have a family. And sometimes relatives are your family, and sometimes your family is elsewhere. But what is that thing? What happened that pushed you to this country? You say you came for a year and you stayed 30.
Yeah.
What's that about?
In a way, wasn't that difficult emotionally because Brazil was going through a very, very tough time. In the 80s, I would leave my house, like I would take my watch, my earrings, put everything in a bag. And then when I got to a friend's house or a restaurant, I would put everything back. You could be smuggled, you call,
No,
pickpocket,
mugged.
any place. And it was really, really hard. People were not, stopping on the light for you to
Right.
cross and stuff. So it was actually easy for me to make the decision. I was living with my partner. He came for the music school and he said, I have this opportunity. What do you think? And I said, if I had the opportunity, I would go. So take your opportunity. And I came with him. So the plan was to stay here for a year only. And then after that, we start like working, making music and being respected and finding people that would respect what we are doing. And then that was it. Nothing better than being in an environment where you feel respected.
Nothing. Wow. He went to MI, Musicians Institute.
No, it was a Grove School of Music that doesn't exist anymore
Uh-huh.
in
And
Van Nuys.
you never went to a music school.
I didn't have the money to pay.
You would have, had you had the money, would you have gone?
I think so. I think so.
What would you have studied? Theory, composition?
I would learn how to read music, I think, and play an instrument. Everything that I did was just, you know, doing on the road, singing. I did very few classes here, few classes there. The ukulele I just picked up now because I got inspired by my friend Marceli Berger that plays.
Yeah.
So
Well,
every
I have to say that there was a time I was a kind of one of your many fans for years, but one day I saw you on the stage. I think it was at UCLA, as a matter of fact, and it may have even been the big stage, but it was a stage. Maybe it was the Schoenberg. Maybe it was in that. But you were singing sambas from the 1930s, and as you sang them, you became the characters. I think that's called interpretation.
I love that.
And I said, oh my God, she's an actress too. And it just hit me it just knocked me out. And that's when I said, I have to work with this person, because I didn't realize what an actress you are. And you act in the song. Talk about how that came. Was there somebody Elise didn't do that
No,
the way that you do it?
actually, she did actually for Falso Brilhante. She did. She did classes and stuff to do that show. But I got it because, too, I went to do an acting class with this group that I loved. I went to university. I went for history, and I didn't finish at UERJ in Rio de Janeiro. And then in the middle of doing this, I got in love with this group called Asdrubal Trouxe o Trombone in Rio. And I decided to do a course with them. And I went to pay for the tuition, didn't have even the money. My father gave me half of the money. The first half, I got it because I made a raffle of Elis Regina's LP. And the last day to do the, to pay the course, I came to my dad and I said, please, I need the half of the money. For whatever reason, that day, blessed day, he gave me. And I went there and I participated with this bunch of people, young people, crazy people, and another type of life opened up for me. So I got a little bit of that expression, so music and the interpretation came all together, what here they call performing and stuff, but that was my way. I wanted to communicate what I was saying, the story behind, and that's the only way that I could do it, because my English wasn't great either, but I participate in a group in Brazil after that called O Espírito da Coisa, that was a mix of theater and music.
What was the first group called? Something about trombone? Say it slower.
Asdrubal, the name of a man, trouxe o trombone. Asdrubal brought the trombone. And from this group was, it's like maybe 7 of them. And they all became like Regina Casé, that is like a director for, and a great actress, Luiz Fernando Guimarães, Evandro Mesquita from Blitz, Patrícia Travassos from Blitz. So there is lots of great people from that group. Brian, do you have another question?
Yeah, I want to jump in. We've had several more questions come in. I have a question from Piers Armstrong asking, please compare the Brazil-LA connection to other U.S.-Brazil connections, like Miami, Brazil, New York, Brazil, or San Francisco, Brazil. So I guess what makes the Brazilian community in Los Angeles and the connections of that community to Brazil different from other places in the United States?
That's interesting. I think that the Miami connection to Brazil, it's even stronger because they are really closer. And there is a group like that I know, they just gave me an award this last year called Focus Brazil. And they have a very strong talks, interviews, and stuff that they do all the time. A journalist called Carlos Borges does that. I think the West Coast is a little slow on that, but not so much from a few years back. Now there is more people doing this kinds of interviews and stuff and bringing artists, because before I would feel that they would come straight to New York, Boston, and Miami and stay there, and they start doing a little bit here, and they start coming this way. Like my friend Patricia Leão, She has the Brazilian Nights um, group, and she started bringing all these artists that were coming to the East Coast to the West Coast. So there is more coming, and it started a long time ago. So did I answer the question? I don't.
Well, thank you, Piers. The San Francisco community, when I came out here 38 years ago, the San Francisco Brazilian community was much more developed, much more active than the Los Angeles
I
community.
agree with you.
But I don't think that that's necessarily the case anymore. I think there's a parity now, except being a bigger city, we have probably more Brazilians at this point than San Francisco. I don't know. We'd have to do a demographic. We'd have to get one of those graduate students to do a little research on that.
Exactly. Yeah.
What else you got, Brian? Any other questions?
I have a question here from Marabi saying, you touched on recent musical developments in Brazil. I've met people in their early 20s in Rio who cannot even name a single bossa nova artist. What has happened to young Brazilians and their musical knowledge and tastes?
Lack of education. Lack of education, not only in Brazil, but here too, that I mentioned before. Bottom line, and the radios were like the music they play, the force of the money behind, and so all of that.
Yeah, I really like that answer too, right? Because it doesn't place. A lot of times we'll hear people sort of complain generically that, the young people of today don't listen to the same quality of music as we listened to back in my day. But you're not so much making, it sounds to me like a critique of the tastes of our youth, but more a critique of the forces of capitalist forces that are promoting a certain kind of culture to them.
Yeah.
At the cost of bringing attention to more intellectual and more politically subversive sorts of messages that we could get through a more politicized and more socially conscious sort of music. So correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what it sounded to me like you were saying.
It's okay, but I remember when I was in Brazil and I was going to public school. My whole life was public school, and the level was excellent. My sister, that is my age, she's a teacher, and she tells me exactly how is going on over there. So I'm following the teachers and what they are saying about the level and the violence and the way the kids treat the teachers. And this is amazing. We had great respect for our teachers before. We wouldn't do that. And now they even say the parents of the kids would come to the teacher and say, if you treat my kid like this, I will kill you. How do you respond to that? Mm. So the society is hurt.
When Paulo Freire becomes public enemy #1 of the regime, the administration, current administration, you know that something is awry. Because for whatever you think about Paulo Freire, he was not a disruptive force in anything but the disruption of the class system of Brazil, which he helped or wanted to turn not upside down, but he wanted people to be able to vote. And to vote, they had to write their names. And to write their names, they had to really know a little bit about reading and writing. So the famous Paulo Freire started very humbly in his living room, in his kitchen in Recife, working out some kind of a method that would work for adult education.
Yeah.
EJA, as it's called in Brazil, Educação de Jovens e Adultos. And I'm an adult educator, and I say to everybody present, adult education is hanging by a thread in this country. And adult education is immigrant education. Everybody who comes here wants to learn English, for God's sake. Let's spend the money where it really does some good. If the kids see their parents going to school, they'll go to school with a renewed vigor and renewed curiosity. So,
Questions,
action.
Brian?
Action. That's it. Look at this, 12:56. Brian.
I love questions.
Wow. Went by quick.
One or maybe two more questions.
Okay.
From Melinda asking, when do you see your next Brazilian Heart performance taking place, and what do you see it looking like?
Okay, so Melinda, I'm working on it. It's inspired by the book by Herbie Hancock called Possibilidades, because I think the pandemic brought us, open up a door and a window and everything of possibilities, how to recreate ourselves. And so it has to do with that. Like I said before, and a donor, a friend of mine, paid half of this, gave the deposit already. I paid for the theater for the deposit. And now the theater is not doing anything because of the pandemic. So they, postponed to this year in September. And we don't know if it's going to be able to happen. And it's going to be happening in another theater, in another location this time that is bigger, actually. So I took a risk. But unfortunately, we are waiting for the pandemic to go.
Mm, 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 mm.
Okay.
Get your shots, wear your masks,
Yeah.
wash your hands, blow your nose. Let's get through this thing. Let's
Question time.
yeah.
So it's like we have one last question and time for one last question. This question is also from Melinda, asking if you feel like there could be a musical movement again, like the 1960s in America and the Brazilian songs that were written in exile, the música de protesto, right? A way to a collective voice to look at the things that need change.
That's a good question, Melinda. Again, I don't have a crystal ball. I just go with my guts and my intuitions and the stuff like that. But I think there is a movement going because of the pandemic, especially, right? I don't want to be more political because Brian is on my feet, on my toes here about this politics thing. And I feel like it's not only him, it's a lot of people, because it's difficult to talk about this theme and what we have to figure out in life from now on. Now, a movement. I feel my intuition is saying that we are coming to a movement. It's little by little, because the world needs, like in my point of view, a transformation right now, and we are going on that because of the way we are choosing political people to represent us, the way we are polarized, and also the way the pandemic is bringing us to. So all of those are new pathways. And I think these are going to have consequences. And those consequences are the ones that are going to create a new wave. Now, how this new wave will be, I don't know. Where are you, Brian?
All right, we are at the end of our time. I keep on forgetting I'm on mute for some reason today. But we're at the end of our time. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for Voices de América Latina today, especially Katia Moraes and Peter Lownds. Next month, we're going to have another voice of the Brazilian community here in Los Angeles, Dr. Ana Cara Lately, a clinical psychologist here in Brazil, from Brazil, who practices here in Los Angeles, who's going to talk about the triple invisibility of being Black, Brazilian, and a woman in contemporary LA. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. You can check out our events on our website or our Facebook page. You can also view the video of this event in almost its entirety, since we started it a little bit late, on our Facebook page as well. So thank you so much for joining us, and all of you have a great day.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Ariadne, for helping us with the sound and everything. Thank you. If you want to know more about what I do here in the community, please go to katiamoraes.com, okay?
All right. Bye-bye.